Imagine you are driving across the absolute vastness of the Australian outback.
Right.
You are on the Stuart Highway in the Northern Territory, and it is basically a stretch of road that just cuts straight through the red, arid heart of the continent.
Yes, and navigating that environment is very much like navigating the open ocean.
Exactly. I mean, if your engine fails or if you break down in the darkness, you are entirely at the mercy of the elements. And, whatever rare, solitary vessel happens to pass you by.
Because there is absolutely no ambient city light out there.
None. No cell service, no immediate help. You are isolated in a way that is just difficult for most people to truly comprehend.
And it is in that exact terrifying isolation that an orange combi van was pulled over on a July night in 2001.
Which brings us to the purpose of our detailed examination today.
Right. We are looking at a really comprehensive stack of reports, timelines, and legal documents to trace the complete biographical timeline of a case that captivated the world.
So our mission for this thorough exploration is to start from the very beginning of a young man's life.
Yes.
And we are going to follow the factual record meticulously, step by step, all the way to the most recent historical developments in 2025.
We are really aiming to understand the entire chronology here, the immense scale of the investigation that followed.
And the sheer logistical nightmare of trying to find the truth in a landscape that stretches on for millions of square miles.
Exactly. And just to be clear for everyone listening, we are strictly examining the facts from our provided sources.
Right. We are going to highlight the bizarre twists, the incredible forensic breakthroughs, and the intricate details that the average person likely does not know.
We want to present this information to you so that you can understand exactly how a routine roadside stop turned into one of the most exhaustive investigations in Australian history.
We will be looking at the science, the legal strategies, and the human elements. But before we get to the dark expanse of the Stuart Highway, we need to understand the people involved.
Right. We need to know who was sitting inside that orange Volkswagen combi van.
So let's start with the primary individual at the center of this narrative, Peter Marco Falconio.
Right. His life started quietly, far removed from the extreme environment of the Australian outback. He was born on September 20, 1972.
In the UK?
Yes, he grew up in Hepworth. It is a small, picturesque village in the West Riding of Yorkshire, England.
Okay.
He was the third of 4 sons in his family. Growing up in a relatively quiet part of the United Kingdom, his early life followed a standard trajectory.
Which eventually led him to his university years.
Exactly. And that academic pursuit is exactly where the trajectory of his life intersected with his travel partner, which, set the stage for everything that followed.
And that partner was Joanne Lees. She was born in 1973.
Right.
The sources say the two met in a local nightclub in 1996, and their lives quickly became deeply intertwined.
It was a very classic romance of the era. By the following year, so 1997, Joanne had made the commitment to move in with Peter in Brighton.
Because he was studying at the University of Brighton at the time.
Right. Yes, he was diligently studying there. They were an adventurous young couple, building a life together on the southern coast of England.
But they shared a significant, consuming ambition. They did not just want to settle down immediately.
No, they wanted to see the world.
And that ambition materialized into a massive, highly structured global itinerary.
Right. On November 15, 2000, they officially embarked on this sprawling international journey.
So where did they go first?
The route they planned took them first through the high altitudes of Nepal and then down into the dense, humid environments of Southeast Asia.
Okay, so a major climate shift.
Absolutely. They traveled through Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and Cambodia.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a classic extended backpacking route. Really a rite of passage for many young British citizens seeking broader horizons before committing to their professional careers.
And the final capstone leg of this extensive world tour was meant to be Australia.
Yeah.
So they have this incredible life-changing trip unfolding. But the historical context surrounding that final destination is just vital to understand.
It really is.
Because back in the United Kingdom, their families were experiencing a profound and highly specific anxiety about the Australian leg of the trip.
Right. This is not just your typical parental worry about children traveling far from home.
No, it was a deeply rooted, palpable fear based on a series of recent, highly publicized, and horrific events.
Exactly. To fully grasp that atmosphere, you have to look at the global perception of Australia during that specific window of time.
Right.
The era was heavily shadowed by a sequence of severe tragedies that had completely dominated international press coverage.
So what specific events are the sources citing here?
They cite 3 specific events that fueled this dread. First, the backpacker murders committed by Ivan Milat in the Belanglo State Forest.
Right, where young tourists were literally hunted down.
Yes. And second, the catastrophic Port Arthur massacre in Tasmania.
Which was a massive watershed moment of mass violence for the country.
Absolutely. And third, the devastating Childers Palace backpackers' hostile fire in Queensland, which claimed the lives of numerous young international travelers.
Wow. Yeah, you can completely see why Terrence would be terrified.
Exactly. These events had fundamentally altered the global perception. The idea of Australia as a carefree, sun-drenched paradise for young backpackers had been replaced.
Right. Replaced, in the minds of many parents, with an underlying current of apprehension.
Exactly. But despite those anxieties from their families, Peter and Joanne pushed forward with their plans. They wanted to see the real Australia.
So they arrived in Sydney on January 16th, 2001, and they entered the country legally on a working holiday visa.
Which is an important detail.
Right, because this type of visa dictates the rhythm of the trip. It allows travelers to stop, work, save money, and then continue traveling.
Which is exactly what they did. They spent several months working and preparing for the next phase of their adventure.
Until June 25, 2001, when they set off on a massive cross-country road trip.
And their planned route was incredibly ambitious.
Right. The documents say they drove from Sydney down to Canberra, continued to Melbourne, headed west to Adelaide, and then
They made the decision to drive straight up the center of the continent to Darwin.
with the ultimate goal of concluding the trip in Brisbane.
Yes. Which brings us precisely to the timeline of the incident.
Okay, let's lay this out. It is Saturday, July 14th, 2001.
Right.
The time is approximately 7:30 p.m. Australian Central Standard Time.
And they are traveling on the Stuart Highway, heading north toward a famous geological formation known as the Devil's Marbles.
They are in their bright orange Volkswagen T2 Combi camper van. Peter is behind the wheel driving,
Yes.
and Joanne is situated in the passenger seat.
And it's 7:30 p.m. in July in the outback. The sun has set. The darkness out there is absolute.
According to the reports, they had a heightened situational awareness at this point in the evening.
They did. They had noticed a specific vehicle following them ever since they had stopped at a roadhouse in a small isolated settlement called Barrow Creek.
Now, let me stop and ask you to clarify this, because in the middle of absolute nowhere, seeing any car at all is rare.
Very rare.
But this vehicle isn't just passing them. It's actively pacing them in the dark over a long distance. So what specifically made this trailing vehicle stand out to them?
Well, it was a very distinct profile. The reports described the vehicle as a white Toyota four-wheel drive equipped with a green canopy on the back.
Okay.
And when you were driving in the total darkness of the outback, the headlights of a trailing car become your entire rearview mirror.
Yeah, that would be unnerving.
It builds a strange anticipation over miles and miles. They fully expected this vehicle to eventually overtake them and disappear into the night ahead.
But it didn't.
No. When the white Toyota finally closed the distance and drew alongside their combi van, the interaction was highly alarming.
What happened?
The driver of the Toyota began gesturing frantically and excitedly at them through the window.
Like trying to get their attention.
Yes, clearly and urgently, indicating that they needed to pull over to the side of the highway immediately.
So they pull over.
Yeah,
And the man's ruse was incredibly specific and manipulative, wasn't it?
very much so. When Peter stopped the combi van and went over to speak with the man who had pulled his Toyota off the road just ahead of them, the man made a specific claim.
Right.
He claimed he had seen sparks shooting out of the combi's exhaust system.
Wow, that is a highly effective, almost brilliant tactic.
It is, because it targets the acute mechanical vulnerability of traveling in such an isolated place.
Absolutely. A mechanical fire in the outback could mean losing your vehicle, your shelter, your supplies, and potentially your life.
Exactly. So Peter naturally went to the rear of the vehicle with the man to investigate the alleged sparks.
Meanwhile, Joanne moved over into the driver's seat.
Right, keeping herself ready to rev the engine so Peter could observe the exhaust under load.
But that mechanical distraction was just the exact mechanism used to isolate Peter.
Yes. While Joanne was waiting in the driver's seat, she suddenly heard a loud bang originating from the rear of the van.
A bang, like an explosion or a gunshot.
The reports just describe it as a sound that was distinct, sharp, and entirely out of place. And mere moments after that sound echoed in the darkness, the man from the Toyota appeared right at her driver's side window.
Oh my God.
And the sources state unequivocally that he was brandishing a silver handgun.
The sequence of events that followed for Joanne was a pure escalating nightmare.
It really was.
The gunman did not just threaten her, he climbed directly into the van.
Yes. He physically overpowered her, forcing her hands behind her back and securing them with black cable ties.
And the reports detail that she did not just submit, right? She fought back.
She actively fought against his attempts to tie her feet together and his attempts to place tape over her mouth to silence her.
Wow. But despite her fierce resistance, she was dragged violently out of the combi and forced toward the Toyota.
That's right. And it's also noted in the documentation that during this terrifying transfer between the vehicles, she observed the presence of the gunman's dog.
Okay, so there's a dog present.
Yes.
So how does she get away? Because her escape from that situation was a matter of sheer survival instinct.
It was. The sources report that, harboring an intense and immediate fear of sexual assault, Joanne seized a fleeting, critical moment of distraction.
What was the distraction?
The gunman had stepped away from her, apparently occupied with the task of moving Peter's body.
Okay.
In that brief, unguarded window, Joanne made the ultimate gamble. She fled from the vehicles and plunged directly into the dark, unforgiving scrub of the outback bush.
With her hands still bound behind her back.
Exactly.
The aftermath of that split-second decision was just a prolonged, agonizing period of terror.
Unimaginable terror.
The reports state that the gunman actively searched the area for her.
And the outback scrub is dense, sharp, and difficult to navigate, especially in complete darkness.
And he passed incredibly close to her hiding spot on 3 separate occasions.
Just think about the psychological toll of that. Hearing your attacker's footsteps and the panting of his dog inches away while you are bound and hiding in the dirt.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
But Joanne remained completely still, controlling her breathing and hiding in the bush for hours.
Yes. It was not until 12:35 a.m., which is roughly 5 hours after the initial stop, that she felt the area was clear enough to emerge.
Right, and she managed to make her way back to the road and successfully flag down a passing road train.
Which is incredibly fortunate for anyone unfamiliar with the terminology. A road train is not a standard commercial truck.
No, it's massive.
It is a massive, multi-trailer behemoth designed to transport freight across the extreme distances of the Australian interior.
The sheer luck of one passing at that exact moment and the driver managing to see her in the dark.
And safely bring hundreds of tons of machinery to a halt. It is remarkable.
The driver and co-driver of that massive truck picked her up, secured her in the cabin, and transported her safely back to the settlement of Burrow Creek.
Right.
So once Joanne reached the safety of Burrow Creek, the official police response was finally initiated.
Yes, but this is where the logistics of the outback truly complicate the narrative.
Let's lay out the precise timeline from the sources. The Alice Springs police were contacted at around 1:30 a.m. But because of the extreme distances involved, Barrow Creek is roughly 280 kilometers north of Alice Springs. Officers did not arrive at the settlement to begin collecting evidence and taking Joanne's initial testimonies until approximately 4:02 a.m.
It's a massive distance. And it wasn't until daylight broke at 7 a.m. that the police, accompanied by the road train driver who had rescued Joanne, commenced a physical search of the highway.
Searching for Peter, the white Toyota, and the gunman.
Exactly.
So when they finally returned to the scene of the attack in the daylight, what did they find?
The physical evidence they found was grim, but extremely scarce.
Okay.
The police discovered a dirt-covered pool of blood on the ground near where the vehicles had stopped.
And what about the van?
They located the couple's orange combi van. It had not been left on the side of the road.
Where was it?
It had been driven and hidden roughly 80 meters off the highway, deep into the thick scrub.
So clearly an attempt to conceal the crime scene from passing traffic. But looking at the documents, there's a staggering procedural detail here that we really need to unpack.
Yes.
Roadblocks were not put in place on the 12 likely exit roads leading out of the district until 8 hours after Joanne had been rescued.
8 hours.
If you are listening to this right now, you are probably wondering how that is even possible. 8 hours gives a suspect driving a powerful four-wheel drive a massive head start.
They could cross state lines in that time.
Easily. So why would there be such a massive delay in sealing off the area?
The reports indicate that the delay stemmed from a combination of the highly unusual nature of the attack and the distinct lack of corroborating physical evidence in those crucial early hours.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, Aside from the pool of blood, there was no body. Peter's personal belongings were missing.
Right.
And the scale of the outback means that setting up roadblocks on 12 different remote exit routes requires mobilizing immense resources.
You'd have to coordinate across jurisdictions, deploy personnel over thousands of square kilometers.
Exactly. It took the authorities several days to fully appreciate the scale and significance of the crime they were dealing with.
Even when they brought in experts, right?
Yes, they
Wow.
brought in 4 expert Aboriginal trackers from a nearby settlement.
And these are individuals who possess an unparalleled ability to read the terrain and track movement through the bush.
The best in the world.
Yeah.
But they found absolutely nothing beyond Joanne's own footprints in the dirt.
Wow.
The landscape had seemingly swallowed the perpetrator and Peter entirely.
And this lack of immediate physical evidence caused a massive and frankly disturbing shift in public perception.
It really did.
Initially, the media framed the incident exactly as it appeared, a sensational, harrowing tale of a young woman's survival against all odds in a crime of unusual horror.
It was a story of incredible bravery.
But then, as the days turned into weeks without a body or a suspect, the media tide turned viciously against her.
Yes.
I find this shift fascinating and tragic. Why does the public turn on survivors when the evidence is delayed?
It comes down to the psychology of expected trauma and how the public consumes true crime narratives.
Right.
The sources state that the public and media became heavily fixated on perceived inconsistencies in Joanne's statements and her overall demeanor.
What kind of inconsistencies?
Specifically, attention was drawn to the facial composite she helped generate of the suspect. Also, shifting descriptions of the perpetrator's vehicle and his dog.
Okay.
And the public's premature assumptions regarding CCTV footage captured at an Alice Springs service station.
And people judged how she acted on camera, didn't they?
Yes. When a survivor like Joanne exhibits shock, stoicism, or guardedness, which are completely natural, documented psychological survival mechanisms, the public often misinterprets that.
They see it as guilt, deception, or a lack of appropriate grief.
Exactly. They expect a victim to perform their trauma in a very specific, recognizable way.
The reports explicitly draw a parallel here to the infamous Azaria Chamberlain case, which is crucial context.
Very important parallel.
For those who might not know, that was the case in 1980 where a mother, Lindy Chamberlain, claimed a dingo took her baby from a tent in the outback.
Right.
The media and the public decided she did not act like a grieving mother should, and she was wrongfully convicted before the evidence eventually cleared her years later.
It just shows how the echo chamber of the media can sometimes violently turn on victims when their trauma responses do not align with public expectations.
And Joanne Lees was caught directly in the crosshairs of that phenomenon.
She was. In a desperate attempt to break the case open and quiet the speculation, authorities offered a massive $250,000 reward for information.
Yet, despite that huge financial incentive, it yielded virtually no new physical evidence.
None.
The breakthrough, when it came, was not from a tip-off, but from a crucial microscopic detail.
An unidentified male DNA trace.
Where did they find it?
It was found on Joanne's T-shirt, and this trace was subsequently matched to related DNA found on the black cable ties used to bind her wrists
Okay.
and on the gear stick of the combi van.
Wow. So that microscopic biological signature became the absolute foundation of the investigation moving forward.
It did, and that DNA, combined with the CCTV footage, formed the basis of the police dragnet.
Let's talk about that CCTV footage, because the strategy regarding the footage from the Alice Springs service station, which was captured at 12:03 a.m. on the night of the attack, was highly calculated.
It was. They released the footage to the public with a specific stated hope.
That the man depicted would come forward to clear his name.
Right, thereby systematically removing innocent people from the pool of suspicion.
But the man in the footage did not come forward.
He did not. So investigators narrowed their focus dramatically.
How so?
They zeroed in on the registered owners of 1991 to 1999 model Toyota Land Cruisers.
Because that matched Joanne's description.
Yes. And specifically, they focused on 36 men whom public callers had identified as closely resembling the figure in the service station footage.
This systematic narrowing process is what finally brings us to the introduction of Bradley John Murdoch.
Yes. Based on the results of their parameters, police actually located and interviewed Murdoch in the town of Broome.
When was this?
On November 1st, 2001.
But this is where the timeline becomes incredibly frustrating.
Very much so.
Because this interview represents a massive missed opportunity.
Does. The sources clarify that Joanne's physical descriptions of the attacker did not immediately or definitively link the crime to Murdoch during that November interview.
Okay.
Furthermore, and perhaps most critically, the police did not collect a DNA sample from him at that time.
Wait, really? They didn't swab him?
No. They interviewed a man who fit the broad parameters, who owned the right type of vehicle, and then they allowed him to walk out of the station.
Without securing the one piece of biological evidence that could have linked him to the T-shirt.
Exactly. And because of that missed opportunity, the breakthroughs required to finally arrest him did not occur until the following year.
So what happened the following year?
On May 17, 2002, a major development unfolded entirely separate from the direct investigation. An accomplice of Murdoch's, an individual who was heavily involved in illicit drug-running operations, was apprehended by authorities on unrelated matters.
Right. And once caught and facing his own charges, this associate began talking to investigators.
Yes, detailing his connections to Murdoch and placing him geographically closer to the events.
Okay.
Following this new intelligence, police utilized a crucial forensic technique. They managed to obtain a DNA swab from Murdoch's brother.
Let's explain how familial DNA works in this context, because it is fascinating.
Right.
They didn't have Murdoch's DNA, but they had the DNA from the crime scene. By testing his brother, they weren't looking for a perfect match, right?
No, they were looking for a genetic echo. The familial DNA analysis supported a clear, undeniable biological link between the brother's swab and the unidentified male DNA found on the homemade handcuffs and Joanne's T-shirt.
It told the police, with scientific certainty, that the perpetrator was a direct male relative of the man they just swabbed.
Exactly. And the moment that link was established, the timeline shows that Murdoch completely disappeared.
He clearly knew the net was closing.
Yes. And he managed to evade authorities, utilizing his knowledge of remote areas to stay hidden for several months.
But his run finally ended on August 22, 2002.
Yes, it did.
However, he wasn't caught by the task force hunting him for the Stuart Highway attack.
No, he was actually arrested in South Australia on an entirely unrelated kidnap and assault charge by the local South Australia police.
So with Murdoch finally in custody and the direct DNA swab confirming he was indeed the man who left the genetic material on Joanne's clothing, the stage was set for the trial.
One of the most high-profile legal battles in the country's history.
The trial officially began on October 17, 2005.
And the logistics of hosting this event were just staggering.
The sources note the extraordinary fact that the Darwin Supreme Court had to undergo $900,000 in structural renovations.
$900,000 just to renovate the courtroom.
Yes, and this wasn't just aesthetic. This was to handle the sheer volume of the global media circus, the necessary security protocols, and the intense public interest surrounding the proceedings.
The judge presiding over this highly charged, modernized courtroom was Chief Justice Brian Ross Martin, QC.
And what were the formal charges laid out against Murdoch?
The charges were severe and comprehensive. He pleaded not guilty to the charge of murdering Peter Falconio, and he also pleaded not guilty to the charges of assaulting and attempting to kidnap Joanne Lees.
So the burden of proof rested entirely on the prosecution to connect this man to a murder without a body.
Yes, the prosecution's case relied heavily and emotionally on Joanne Lees' harrowing testimony.
She took the stand in a packed courtroom, right?
She did. She formally and unequivocally identified Murdoch as her attacker.
The legal records show she had first identified him via a physical lineup of police photographs back in November 2002.
Right. And she reaffirmed this identification face-to-face in the courtroom.
She recounted the terrifying details for the jury. How the assailant tied her wrists behind her back, forced a sack over her head to disorient and terrify her, and violently shoved her between the seats and into the rear of his vehicle.
To bolster her account and provide an objective framework for her trauma, the prosecution brought in several key supporting witnesses.
Who did they bring in?
Well, Teddy Ian testified. He was the expert Aboriginal tracker who had been involved in the initial fruitless search for Peter's body.
What did he say?
He confirmed the physical evidence in the dirt, that Joanne had indeed hidden in the bush exactly where and how she described.
Okay, so validating her timeline and her account of the evasion.
Yes. Furthermore, James Helpy, the drug-running associate, along with Murdoch's own father, provided devastating corroborating testimony.
Their own father testified.
Yes, they both looked at the evidence and positively identified Murdoch as the man captured in the Alice Springs service station CCTV footage for the night of the attack.
Wow. But the true cornerstone of the prosecution's case, The absolute impenetrable wall they built was the scientific evidence.
The DNA.
Right. The police had successfully isolated traces of Murdoch's DNA on the homemade handcuffs used to bind Joanne.
On the gear stick of the combi van that the attacker drove into the scrub?
And, most importantly, a significant profile on Joanne's T-shirt.
And to understand the weight of that evidence, we have to look at the mathematics presented to the court.
Let's break this down.
Expert testimony concluded that the DNA found on Joanne's T-shirt was 150 quadrillion times more likely to belong to Bradley John Murdoch than to any other human being on the planet.
Wait, 150 quadrillion?
Yes, 150 quadrillion. To put that number into perspective, you would need to take the entire current population of Earth, multiply it by nearly 20 million, and statistically, you would still only expect to find one single person with this exact genetic barcode.
That is just an unfathomable number. It was a mathematical mountain that the defense had to somehow dismantle.
And we must present the defense's arguments entirely objectively, exactly as they are outlined in the legal document.
Right. To combat those overwhelming DNA statistics, Murdoch's legal team could not argue the math.
So they argued the mechanism.
Okay.
They utilized the theory of secondary DNA contamination.
Meaning what exactly?
They posited that the biological material could have been accidentally transferred without any criminal contact.
Oh, I see.
Specifically, Murdoch took the stand and gave sworn evidence claiming that prior to the alleged offense, he had stopped at a Red Rooster restaurant in Alice Springs.
And he claimed he bought chicken for himself and his dog there.
Yes. And he argued that his DNA could have been transferred onto Joanne's clothing during a completely innocuous interaction or environmental transfer at that public location.
Like brushing past her or touching a shared surface.
Exactly. Additionally, the defense brought forward eyewitness accounts to cast doubt on the core premise of the murder charge.
Right, because without a body, they tried to claim Peter was still alive.
Yes. These individuals claimed to have seen Peter Falconio alive at a petrol station a full week after his reported disappearance.
Which, if true, would completely invalidate the prosecution's timeline.
It would. However, the prosecutor, Rex Wild QC, methodically and ruthlessly dismantled these claims in front of the jury. He highlighted that each of these eyewitness accounts contained conflicting information. He pointed out specific discrepancies regarding the man's physical description, such as his hair color.
Okay.
And he demonstrated through police logs that investigators had meticulously followed up on every single reported sighting across the country, proving all of them to be entirely fruitless cases of mistaken identity.
The climax of the trial arrived on December 13th, 2005.
After digesting months of testimony, forensic science, and legal arguments, the jury returned a unanimous verdict of guilty.
Bradley John Murdoch was sentenced to life imprisonment, carrying a strict 28-year non-parole period.
He was also formally convicted on the assault and kidnap-related charges against Joanne Lees.
And it is a matter of public record that only after the sentencing was handed down did a significant piece of Murdoch's background become known to the wider public.
Yes, the prior charges.
Right. He had previously been acquitted of an aggravated sexual assault on a mother and daughter in South Australia years earlier.
And we note this purely as a factual biographical detail of his legal history prior to his conviction for the events on the Stuart Highway.
Because it was suppressed during the trial to ensure a fair hearing based solely on the evidence of the Falconio case.
Exactly. Now, following the conviction, the legal maneuvering did not stop. It simply transitioned into the protracted appeals process.
Murdoch's lawyers fought the life sentence vigorously. On December 12, 2006, they lodged a comprehensive appeal in the Supreme Court, presenting 8 separate grounds for overturning the conviction.
A major pillar of their argument was the claim that Joanne Lees' vital testimony and her identification of Murdoch were irreparably tainted.
Because she had viewed photographs of him on the internet, right?
Yes. They argued that because she had admittedly viewed photographs of Murdoch on the internet before her official police identification interview, her memory was influenced by media coverage rather than her actual experience.
Okay, so what did the court say about that?
The Northern Territory Court of Criminal Appeal reviewed these claims in exhaustive detail and ultimately dismissed the appeal on January 10, 2007.
Undeterred by this failure, Murdoch's legal team escalated the matter, applying for special leave to appeal directly to the High Court of Australia, which is the highest court in the land.
But on June 21, 2007, the High Court firmly refused to grant this special leave.
which effectively exhausted his standard immediate opportunities for appeal within the Australian judicial system, though the timeline notes he would later launch another, similarly unsuccessful appeal attempt in 2013.
Now, while the courts were dealing with the rigid legal appeals, a truly bizarre, almost unbelievable contradiction emerged in the press.
Yes, this is wild. In April 2006, the publication The Bulletin reported a revelation originating directly from the maximum security Barrymore prison in Darwin, where Murdoch was currently being held.
And the revelation pertained to something as mundane as his daily dietary requirements.
What was it?
The investigative report stated that Murdoch had a standing medical certificate on file at the prison administration.
Okay.
Furthermore, the prison had assigned a specific dietitian to create a customized menu exclusively for him.
And the administrative reason for this specialized treatment and allocation of resources was Murdoch's steadfast, documented claim that he was severely allergic to chicken.
Yes. He had formally requested that he absolutely never be served it while incarcerated due to the health risks.
Now, when you analyze this dietary detail against the sworn trial record, it presents a massive, glaring contradiction.
Let's trace the logic here.
Murdoch's entire defense regarding the presence of his DNA on Joanne's T-shirt, the very core of his alibi to explain away a 150 quadrillion to 1 genetic match, rested on his sworn testimony that the transfer happened while he was actively buying and handling chicken at a Red Rooster restaurant for himself and his dog.
Exactly. This revelation from the prison dietitian documenting his severe allergy completely unravels the foundational narrative of his defense.
It exposes the alibi as an apparent fabrication.
It does. Now, as the legal avenues definitively closed and the inconsistencies in his defense became public, the cultural impact of the case continued to expand.
Deeply permeating international media and pop culture.
Yes. The sources note the 2005 release of the highly successful Australian horror film Wolf Creek.
Right, and while the filmmakers stated it was broadly inspired by several violent crimes, including the Belanglo backpacker murders, its thematic similarities to the Stuart Highway attack were overwhelmingly strong.
So strong, in fact, that the Northern Territory Court actually took the extraordinary step of placing an injunction on its release within the territory.
Really? An injunction?
Yes, they did this specifically to prevent prejudicing the jury pool during Murdoch's ongoing trial.
Joanne Lees also makes strategic decisions to engage with the media to ensure the case, and the search for Peter remained in the public eye.
She participated in a highly publicized, exclusive interview with Martin Bashir.
For this interview, the sources say she was paid £50,000.
Right. And while the public often heavily scrutinizes victims who accept payment for interviews, she explicitly stated that the sum was accepted to raise crucial, continued awareness of the murder.
And to fund her ongoing legal and travel expenses related to the trial.
Yes. In 2006, she released a comprehensive book about her life and the ordeal titled No Turning Back, and conducted extensive follow-up interviews with the BBC.
The intense public interest also spawned numerous television projects over the decades.
Such as the 2007 Channel 10 docudrama titled Joanne Lees, Murder in the Outback, and later a comprehensive 4-part documentary series broadcast by Channel 4 and Channel 7 in 2020.
Now, alongside the mainstream media coverage and the official police narrative, the text reports factually that a subculture of alternative theories and elaborate conspiracies flourished.
Right. In 2011, an author named Keith Allen Noble published a book titled Find Falconio.
And what did this book claim?
In this publication, he baselessly insisted on Murdoch's complete innocence, characterized the entire judicial proceeding as a corrupt show trial, and went so far as to publicly offer a £25,000 reward.
A reward for what?
To anyone who could provide definitive proof that Peter Falconio was still alive, feeding into the fringe theories that the murder was staged.
Wow. The sources also detail a deeply unsettling, highly specific development from April 2017.
Yes, the anonymous letter.
The NT News received an anonymous letter containing incredibly macabre allegations regarding the disposal of the remains.
The author of the letter claimed that Murdoch had cut up Peter's body, placed the remains into 2 large sealed bags, and instructed an unnamed associate to transport them across the country.
Transport them where?
To dissolve them in acid in the Swan River in Perth.
My God.
The letter further alleged that this associate panicked during the transport, bypassed Perth entirely, drove past Geraldton, and buried the unopened bags in a remote, unspecified area of Western Australia.
So what did the police do with this information?
Northern Territory Police took the claims seriously enough to officially review the contents of this letter, though it led to no physical recovery.
Which brings us to the final, definitive historical developments documented in the sources.
The pursuit of the truth by the authorities never ceased, even decades later.
In June 2025, just ahead of the 24th anniversary of the crime, Australian police made a massive, renewed public push.
They announced a staggering $500,000 reward for any information leading directly to the discovery of Peter's remains.
Hoping the passage of time or changing allegiances might lessen a silence.
Yes. Concurrently, while the police were issuing this $500,000 reward, Bradley Murdoch's life was reaching its inevitable conclusion.
The medical records show he was diagnosed with terminal throat cancer in 2019.
His physical condition steadily deteriorated over the subsequent years in maximum security.
And on June 24th, 2025, his health reached a point where he was transferred from his prison environment to receive end-of-life palliative care at Alice Springs Hospital.
The final biographical data point provided in the comprehensive document states that Bradley John Murdoch died in that hospital bed on July 15, 2025, at the age of 67.
The enduring, profound tragedy of this entire timeline is that he took his knowledge to the grave.
He did.
Despite decades of intense psychological pressure, despite numerous appeals, and despite being the central focus of one of the most exhaustive, well-funded police investigations in Australian history, he never once revealed the location of Peter Falconio's remains.
Tragic.
As we conclude this examination, I want you to consider a striking, almost incomprehensible reality based on the text we have just reviewed. How is it possible that in a modern era of 150 quadrillion to 1 DNA matches, global media scrutiny that analyzes every frame of CCTV, and $500,000 rewards, the physical truth of a person's final resting place can simply vanish into the scrub of the outback? It is a chilling testament to the unforgiving, endless vastness of that landscape, which continues to hold its secrets tightly in the red dirt. Thanks for listening.